All right, let's get started. All right, today we're going to talk about mostly the certification required if you're going to be a professional engineer. So I'm just going to walk through, I think we've already done the ethics piece, so we won't do that. And then we will do prototypes. So today is a prototype check. That's what this form's about. So if you have this in front of you or within your team, then just make sure. Anybody need one? Any teams need one? All you do is get your names on the bottom. The rest I fill out, so don't fill it out. If a team member is not there, I need to know that. I still want their name on the paper, but if they're not here, I need that information. Yeah, just fill it in and then circle it or something. Just identify the folks that aren't there. I need to know. All right, what is a professional? So if you have the knowledge and skill that's typically not possessed by the general public, you'll be deemed a professional. Not all professionals are licensed. So what kind of folks come to mind when we talk about professionals other than engineers? We know there's a PE out there. What other disciplines? Medical, for sure. Yeah, those folks go through certifications, they pass tests, they definitely possess knowledge that the general public doesn't have. What else? Give me one more. Medical, engineers, teachers. A lot of teachers have master's degrees, PhDs, absolutely. What else? Another one. Lawyers? What do you think? Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually several more nurses, you know, they're definitely passing. It's medical, but let's expand medical, right? Surgeons. All right. Continued education. All professionals are going to have continued education. So your associate's degree, your bachelor's degree, that is definitely not the end of your education. So it'll be the end of the intense part. But as you'll see as we go through this, if you want to become a professional engineer, it requires 4 more years after your bachelor's degree, in which that will be on the job training. So lots of continued education. We use softwares a lot. Those softwares are coming out every 6 months typically. So your own continued education in the equipment you use, the softwares, is super important. Typically, professionals are going to supply or be part of services for the general public. So engineers, we do lots of services for the public. So that's where licensure and certifications are highly required. It means you take personal responsibility for your work. So if you become a PE, professional engineer, then you will be responsible for the work that you perform, whether you stamp it or not. As an associate degree and even a bachelor's degree, you are responsible for your work. So just think about that as you're going through your career, those drawings you make, those decisions you make, you are going to be responsible for them at some point. So just know that. And to be a PE, a formal professional engineer, you've got to have a license. So I am not a PE. I didn't sit for the test. I'm not. Okay. I'm an engineer. I do work that is used by the public, but that needs to be stamped by a professional engineer, typically. Okay. So that's the difference. That's the primary difference between somebody that says, hey, I'm an engineer, and somebody who says, hey, I'm a professional engineer. That means you've sat for the test and you've passed it. That's what it should mean. Yeah.
What if PE generally do?
No. Just regular engineers will do that often. So I'll get into this a little more, but professional engineers are going to be in research and development typically. Original design. So a lot of design is not original design. A lot of design is, hey, this is how we've been building planes forever. We'd like to improve this one area. You might have some original content in that one area, but you're not doing like a new prototype of a plane type of thing, right? So, yeah, they're going to be in research and development. PEs are going to be stamping drawings. So like at Peter Hewitt, where I worked, we had one PE on for probably 30 engineers. So if we had something that was going to go out to the public and get used by the public, then it would go through that person. They would stamp it, send it out. So that the level of that review is different depending on who does the work, right? In my first 10 years, if I did work that went to the PE, he'd go over it pretty darn carefully. And then after 20 years there, then they kind of know who's got their area down and they'll just stamp it and send it. So. And then also the professional engineering licensure requires you to follow a specific code of ethics that's above the standard engineering code of ethics. So I think I have some examples of that. Quality of work, social trust. Usually, if you are a professional in some field, there's a certain amount of trust that's just given automatically because you've passed the test and you've decided to take on that responsibility. Medical profession's pretty big in that area. Lawyers too, though. You're putting a lot of trust in those folks if you're going to them and getting services from them. We'll come back to that website. So here's some common elements that you'll find across the board in professional organizations. The compensation will be higher for sure. So if you are a PE, you're going to be able to take on a lot more responsibility than a standard engineer. There are definitely organizations and institutions that really push the professional engineering license. And it is, I mean, it's a feather in your cap if you get your PE. It'll broaden your scope of work and who you can work for, especially if you're interested in going to work for a consulting firm. So if you look out there, there's a few around the Portland area, big consulting firms like CH2M Hill is one of them. That's literally a building full of engineers, right? And all they do is consult for other companies that need engineering done. And they want that engineering stamped. So if you want to go to work as a consulting engineer for a company that's going to do engineering for other companies, like Boeing, for example, uses thousands of consultants. They don't do all of their work in-house. Some of the consulting is in the manufacturing. Some of the consulting at Boeing is in engineering. So they'll reach out to aeronautical engineering firms to do some engineering for them. That's what consultants do. If you think at some point you want to hang up a sign that says Donaldson Engineering, then you need your PE for sure, no question. But if you do that, folks will come and say, hey, we need some engineering done on our project. We want that stamped. We want to get we want to go out and make it an original design, get a patent, all that good stuff. You need a stamped professional engineer to do that work. Okay, so it does open up opportunities for sure, and compensation. So again, public good is always involved in any kind of a professional education and a professional career. You got to have a formal education. Not just anyone can sit for the PE. So in the state of Oregon, you have to have a bachelor's degree to sit for the PE and 4 years mentorship under a professional engineer. So if you want to become a PE, you need to go to work after your bachelor's degree with a company that has a professional engineer. Not all of them do. So just know that you've got to work for one. Now it can be, that person can be in another country, in another office, but they are going to mentor you. So John was here. He got his professional engineering license. He worked here as a teacher under a civil instructor that was a professional engineer. So you don't even have to be in the field. You just have to be supervised and mentored by a professional engineer. It's a little, I don't know. It's very old school, but that's the way it is. But you can almost always find, if it's a company of any size, there'll be some PE on staff that'll mentor you. Yeah. No, all states are similar that way. Each state does have its own little rules, which is interesting. In Oregon's one of the few states with a 2-year degree, you can actually get a professional engineering license, but it takes 8 years mentorship under a professional engineer, and it's almost never done. I only know of one person who's ever done it with a 2-year degree. Why is it that way in Oregon? I don't know. We're one of the early states to kind of resist the traditional engineering route by introducing engineering technology. Now engineering technology is across the country and it's pretty accepted. But there's this common kind of conversation about the value of calculus in engineering. So the traditional universities require a calculus-based engineering program, and ABET, which is the accreditation body, requires it. So since they're requiring it, then the universities have to do it. But at some point, people are saying, why? Because 99% of the engineers that go out there don't do calculus. I mean, I've done calculus once in the 12 years I did formal engineering. And if you talk to other engineers, just chat them up and say, hey, when's the last time you integrated? They'll go, oh, that was what class in college? Yeah. So I mean, at different levels, I think that comes into play more, but not in the traditional engineering format. So there's people that resist that in education, like, why are we doing this? Like, we could get a much higher, group that would be interested in this discipline if it wasn't so theoretically based. So that's why you have some non-theory based programs out there now. So anyway, there was a hand up.
So once you get it.
Nope, that doesn't mean your PE is only good in Oregon. Yeah, so some states have reciprocity, which I think Washington does, so you'd be good in Washington. But like, if you're gonna go to Louisiana, you'd have to sit with it. Yep.
How long was the test?
The PE test, 8 hours. And the FE test is 8 hours. So you have to pass, we'll get to the FE, but you have to pass the FE before you can sit for the PE. The FE is the fundamentals of engineering exam, in my opinion, and from what I've heard, way harder than the PE. The PE, you've been out of school for 4 years. So guess how much you remember, like from each class? Well, it's pretty limited because you're out, you're doing engineering in your field. You might be super like tuned into hydraulics or whatever you're working on in your field, but you maybe have forgot all that thermodynamics and electrical power systems and everything else you had to take, right? So the PE understands that, and it's just a more conceptual based test. The FE is like final exam in statics and a final exam in electrical power systems and a final exam in thermodynamics and a final exam in about 6 topics that you don't know which ones they're going to test you on. The FE. Super hard. So they don't tell you. You get to choose 2 topics in the morning, the first 4 hours for the FE. So the FE, you can go in and say, I want to do material science and I want to do thermodynamics. I want those to be my 2 topics. So then they give you a 4-hour test on that, which is harder than the afternoon because you've focused it, right? And then the afternoon is just a smorgasbord of nightmare. It's terrible. They don't tell you. Ask me more about the FE and I'll just say they don't tell you. How do they grade it? They don't tell you. So there are people who believe like it could be the number of problems you work and the number you got right. So just work 1 problem. And if you get it right, you pass. But I don't believe that. So, but it does change every year how they grade it. And you also don't know your score. You know, pass or fail. It's rough. Yeah. Yeah. I was so glad I passed. Huh? For the FE? No requirements. Anyone can sit for the FE. Yeah. So they really, when I went to school, they recommended you sit for it in your between your 3rd and 4th year. After your junior year, you have most of your content in your program. Senior year, you're gonna get some more and you're gonna definitely work on specific areas. But you got your senior project, you have a lot of other things going on your senior year. So they say sit for it between your third and fourth year. That's your best chance of passing it. And then if you don't pass it, then you got your fourth year to do it again. So you can take it in the state of Oregon now, though it'll be offered like 2 different places in the state of Oregon. It moves around. It's at a university. It's a proctored test at a university. So it moves around. You can look it up. Fundamentals in Engineering Exam. You could probably look it up right now and find the dates and where it's at. So the year we took it way back in the day, it wasn't offered in Oregon that year. So we had to go to San Francisco to take it, which was super fun. It was like road trip, take this test, road trip. It was very fun. So that one you can take anywhere. All right, let's keep going. Yep, all of those things. There are specific requirements to enter the profession. That's what makes a profession. This is a great place. If you're interested in PE, there is a National Society of Professional Engineers. And these folks would say all engineers should be professional engineers, absolutely every one of them. And I still think the percentage is around 15% that actually sit for it. I mean, if you think about, a 4 or 5 year engineering program, you're pretty done after that. Like you just want to go to work. And then once you get to work, start making some money, it's kind of hard to kind of ramp up and take another test for some folks. And then if you're like in a company as an engineer, there's probably no need for you to sit for that test, right? If that's where you're going to go and do that work and that's your career, then the PE is like, I don't really need that. I'm doing really well. So, but this site has a lot of information about it. So. It's in the slideshow. I'll put this slideshow up, but it's NSPE. What's fun is that when you sit down with a bunch of PEs, they're like their own little group. They're no longer MEs or CEs or double E's, they're PEs. Like, what was your discipline? I'm a PE. In what? It's kind of funny. But it is, it's impressive to get it, so. Only PEs may prepare, approve, submit drawings to public authorities. So that is not actually completely true. Because I prepare drawings and I submit them to the county all the time. Right, I do that all the time in my little construction. But that's because there's prescriptive code. There is code for structures in the state of Oregon, right? Anybody can look up the code. And prescriptive code means if you follow this code, you can build it. It's approved. Some professional engineer has already figured out that it's good, right? So when you build a structure like I do, if that structure has exterior walls that are not over 10 feet, that's prescriptive code. So if I want to go 20 feet, then I need to go get a structural engineer. There's no longer prescriptive code. They wouldn't take my drawing, right? You can't put a window within 4 feet of a corner in a standard prescriptive code building. So if you want a window like right in the corner, or you want the whole corner glass, you need a structural engineer. That makes sense? So you can submit some things in some areas. If there's prescriptive codes for trailers, there's prescriptive code for a lot of things. So that's how you find, John down the street building trailers and selling them. He's not an engineer. What the heck? I trust this guy. Well, yeah, potentially he could be following prescriptive code, he or she. All right. Approve engineering work for public or private client. So that's the whole consulting thing, right? You can approve work. Most of them won't do it, but some do it. They'll only kind of approve their own work. There's a giant insurance policy that comes with professional engineering. So yeah. Yeah. Huge liability. Yep. be a consultant, PEs. Use the term engineer in your title. That one's pretty stretched by folks. There's a lot of folks that call themselves an engineer, right? I wouldn't call myself a professional engineer, but I would call myself an engineer. So. Higher salaries. Some jobs do require the licensure. Like if you're going to go to work for a consultant, they're going to want you to be a PE. Prestige. So again, I think this slideshow was originally put together by a professional engineer. So there you go. I think this is the same. Want to get to the. So once you become a PE, you can register as a PE. So there's reasons for doing that. Kind of similar to what we've already talked about. Same organization. Legally responsible. Should be concerned with the quality of your work anyway. You have your own code of ethics. Here's the canons. I think we've gone through similar ones with ASME. The canons are basically your code of ethics as a professional engineer. That second one's kind of big because what you'll find when you get your engineering degree and somebody learns you're an engineer, they'll ask you questions about like crazy stuff. Like, you're an engineer, you'll know how to do this. I'm like, no, I am not a rocket scientist. Like, I'm a mechanical engineer. I do this kind of thing, right? So you do get a lot of requests for work that is not in your area. So you have to be super comfortable saying, nope, not that kind of an engineer. Nope. Avoid deceptive acts. Conduct yourself honorably. Ethical violations. So this works for both professional engineers and engineers. Obviously, you can lose your membership. That's a bummer. I can think of worse things like fines. Yeah, or jail time or any kind of liability like that. But any violation can come back and kind of affect your career. I think it's pretty rare. Like, it's discussed a lot when you talk about the whole professionalism of engineering. But it's, I mean, if you're working for a company, it's amazing how kind of stuff goes downhill. Like, I don't want to say stuff, but I think you know what I mean. That stuff comes downhill. So, you know, people get in trouble down the chain of effort. And you might think you're down the chain a ways, but you might be the one that made the drawing, right? Even though it was somebody else's drawing, you made it, your name's on it. Pretty soon, somehow you're involved in this problem. So it can be serious. I think in the end they didn't, but that company went under, just dissolved. Like, so I'm not sure they all went off and did some engineering anywhere else. I don't think that happened either. So absolutely. Yeah. Yep. 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 Absolutely. There is. I don't know about extremely good PEs. I think maybe extremely old PEs that are just willing to go to the meetings, right? And volunteer. It's kind of like your school board members, right? They mean well, but maybe they haven't been in school for 50 years. So maybe they're not the right ones. I don't know. But there's definitely a board. It's like ABET. ABET's a very old organization that is controlling the engineering education that goes on in public institutions, right? And they do good. They do really good stuff. But they're also just very old, traditional education. And it, you know, it just at times needs adjusted. You can lose your contract. You can get bad press. Here's the path. So in most states, almost all states, you need a bachelor's degree in engineering from an ABET accredited engineering program. And that's going to be your universities, your state universities, and some private institutions will have ABET accredited college education in engineering. So if you think of all the big ones in the state of Oregon that have engineering, they're definitely ABET accredited. Same with Washington and California. An example of this is we used to have something called the, I think it was ITT, Institute of Technical Education in Oregon. I think it was ITT. That was a private school that was claiming to teach engineering and drafting and graphics. And they were super expensive. And you could come out of there with like a 3-year engineering degree, right? But it was not ABET accredited. But that doesn't stop these institutions from doing whatever they're doing. And even folks came out and got decent jobs, right? Because they had some pretty good skill sets. But you cannot go on and get a licensure. You could not sit for the FE or the PE through that education. I think you could sit for the FE, but not the PE. So it's got to be, it's still got to be an accredited school. They kept those students, when that school was dissolving, they would come to public institutions and try and articulate their credits, and we can't even take their credits. So it was really rough. Apply for the right to sit for the fundamentals of engineering exam. I guess you do have to make application, but if you're in an ABET accredited school, they're going to let you sit for it. A few $100 to sit for it. Huh? Yeah. So once you pass the FE, then now you're in engineering training. So you get your bachelor's degree in engineering and you become an engineering training. And then you, I think, go for 4 years. Yeah. And that has to be under a professional engineer. There's a few rules for that professional engineer. I think they have to do some work evaluation, regular evaluation. You get some employer evaluations, and then you'll apply to sit for the PE. Not really. I think it's I would use it as a resume. I did use it as a resume piece for sure. Yeah. So then at least an employer knows, hey, if we put this person, with a PE, maybe they'll sit for it in 4 years, even though they say they don't want it. And I might have done that had I been under a PE when I went to work for Kiewit, but I just wasn't focused on it, and there wasn't one around in my building, and I didn't pursue it. So I think it's definitely a resume piece if you pass the thing, for sure. I think everyone should sit for it. Like if you're going to engineering school and you make it through the 3rd year, sit for the test. Now's the time. You don't want to sit for it like 4 years later. It won't work. It's a really rough test. Then once you pass the PE, you are now a professional engineer.
After 4 years of like engineering practice.
Yep, you do. That's a good question. Yeah. There can be gaps, like if you change employers and you didn't find a PE for 6 months or something, and then you found one, but it's got to be 4 years. So there are rules and regulations to maintaining it. I don't know those. You can look them up, I'm sure. It's probably not a lot different than the rest of us. Yeah. No. Nope. But I think there is continuing ed. Like there's a lot of professions that have continuing education. Even the construction industry. I'm a contractor. I'm a licensed contractor with the state of Oregon. So I have a required number of continuing education hours I have to do every year. As you get further along, after you've been in for 6 years, you have to do less continuing education. which I think is just opposite. Like you're all educated up when you get the license because you took the class and you passed the test, right? So you're kind of educated up, like I'd say go lighter on the continuing ed right then, but yeah, that's the way it works. So it's 24 hours of continuing ed, your first 4 years in the construction world. So professional engineering will have a similar thing. And that usually means just take some classes. Those can be classes offered by software companies, which is what a lot of us do. When SolidWorks comes out with the new version, a lot of us head downtown Portland to the local SolidWorks dealer who's going to host a class on the new software. And you can sit there for 3 hours and learn so much so fast, way faster than trying to hack through it yourself. If StructCalc comes up with a new version of their software, I go sit in that. So I don't have to try and learn what the new version does.
Are there any classes that you could take outside? So, that would like prepare you for the PE or the FE?
Oh yeah, it's a great question. Both the FE and the PE have a class that you can take.
Ready? Pass these classes?
It's not a pass fail, it's just to take the class to get the knowledge, pay the credits, take the class. They're going to give you an A in the class. I took the class in college and it's the craziest class. Like it's 12 weeks and it's 12 topics. So just think of your 12 hardest classes in college. In one night, they're going to cover the entire content. So like one night will be AC/DC fundamentals and the AC/DC professor will come to that class in 4 hours, cover the entire topic. Like you took a 12-week course and you're just sitting there going, what are you doing? Like, where am I right now? You know, one night was calculus and like calculus instructor came in and just like did a whole 253 in one night. I'm like, it's not going to work. Yeah. So really you're just, what they do bring is some sample questions because the questions are released each year. So you can go online and get FE questions. You can get endless FE questions. So they'll bring in some sample questions and just work through some stuff and remind you of the bigger concepts. But it's a crazy class to take. And then the PE has a similar class. And the PE has a great book. It's like this thick. Yeah. So you start working your way through the book. That's how John passed it and Andy passed it. They just worked through the PE book. So yeah, I'm getting flashbacks. Back when I took it, you could take resources in. People were going in with like wheelbarrows of books. I'm like, I am not doing that. So I took in my mechanical engineering handbook. It worked. The mechanical engineering handbook has every topic in it. Every topic in mechanical engineering is in the book. If you want to see one, it's in my office. It's rough. All right, I think that's it. Oh, we did that one already. All right, we're good. Questions? Have a feel for that? PE is not required, but if you're going through the whole 4-year degree, sit for the FE, take that test. If you don't pass it, no big deal. Sit for it again, pass it the second time. I was pretty confident I didn't pass it. So when I walked out of there, I went, no way, that was not good. I did. They sent me the notice that I passed. I really wanted to know my score because I'm sure it was like 81. I think at 80 was passing that year. So, but I had several people that were, in my opinion, way smarter that didn't pass it. But I don't think they worked. I was more of the philosophy, I just bombed through it. Like if I didn't think I could solve that problem, I moved on. So I just really focused on the ones I thought I could solve. And I know I killed the morning, so I was trying to just hang in there in the afternoon. So it was tough. Yeah.
Did you answer every question?
No, I did not.
How many questions are there?
It seems like an endless amount of questions.
Oh,
Yeah. Like when you got the book, it was a book. I don't know how they do it now, but when I got the book, it was like this thick of questions. I'm like, yeah, nope, not working my way through that. So you got that feeling right away, like, okay, there's no way I can get through this volume. That was the afternoon. The morning was more defined. I think the morning was 100 questions and I did material science, and then 100 questions and I did thermodynamics. So 4 and 4. Yeah, it with a 1 hour break in between. But no resources for you now, no resources. You can't take a book in. So they say, the group says the FE has changed from a resource kind of heavy test to a less heavy, no resource test. So, yeah, it's rough. No cheat sheets, no, nothing. No calculators when we did it. Like, what? Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. So I don't know how they do it now. I should go sit for it. That'd be fun. Anybody want to go? We can go. Anybody want to go sit for it this year? I'll go with you. All right.
Yeah, a couple hundred.